Time for the former Labor Senator Stephen Conroy. Stephen, good to see you. So you've got yourself, and we're all watching on with concern, a flooding emergency in Victoria and the southern parts of New South Wales as well. The government, Jim Chalmers on the program last hour, says they may well be looking at other payment options for people who are caught up in that. Is that the right thing to do?
Well, I think the extent of the flooding, they're describing it as more than 100-year event. And it could last weeks. So I think most of the emergency payments usually don't take that long. So I would think, given the forecast, given the expectation, greater support is probably what's going to be needed. And people hit will welcome that, I would have imagined.
Treasury forecasts when it comes to inflation had been, as of a few months ago, that inflation would top out at about 7.75% before it would eventually come down. Jim Chalmers, again, watching this one closely, do you expect that to go above that now? Are we potentially looking something over 8%?
Look, what we know is that this is going to lead to shortages, and shortages lead to price increases. How significant, it's a little too early to call. I mean, I think it's right for the Treasurer to be upfront. I mean, imagine if he said, no, all of these shortages won't lead to any price increases. Yeah. So he's just been very straightforward. The extent of them, I don't think people will be able to calculate. Treasury's job, week out budget. They've got to try and make predictions. What you know is prices in the short term are not going to go down on a whole bunch of farm produce from these regions. So certainly it's going to be higher than it was forecast a month ago. But whether it busts 8, it's a little too early. I mean, Treasury have got their models, which have proven to be deeply flawed in the past. So we'll see a number, and then in 6 months' time, we'll be able to tell whether it was accurate or not.
Do you think the government should still persist with its commitment to fund $2.2 billion when it comes to the urban rail loop?
Well, the federal government have indicated it was supporting Daniel Andrews' project. So I can't see why suddenly they would not do it. I mean, this is a piece of infrastructure that Melbourne needs. You just got to look at the different planning, and a lot of this is to do with the physical geography. But Melbourne is fortunate that we've been able to plan years and years ahead, moving around our great city and our great state. Whereas New South Wales will be constrained by a more higgledy-piggledy approach. The geography's been harder. They've got to build a lot more infrastructure projects that are more expensive because they weren't able to plan years in advance. So Melbourne plans years in advance to ensure that the amenity of our city is it wins regularly. The best city to live in the world. That's why.
Dan Tehan, he was on the program yesterday. He said the payment for that should be deferred because the roads in his electorate have been smashed up. We've seen the pictures in Shepparton as well. In some parts, there's no way that cars could even drive on it. I mean, has he got a point in that regard?
Well, I saw Dan and I saw Matt. And I mean, look, it is hard to keep a straight face. I mean, these guys were in charge of the Treasury. They had the purse strings for 9 years, and they didn't do enough to make these pieces of infrastructure resilient. Another weather event comes along and they want to try and blame Labor and say, oh, you've got the wrong priority. Well, what were your priorities for 9 years, Matt? What were your priorities, Dan? You haven't done enough over a 9-year period in government. Then don't try and blame Labor. Labor has got a commitment right across. We haven't seen the full package. They're just trying to pick on one tiny aspect to pretend there's some atrocity taking place. And we know Barnaby Joyce boasted he got between $20 and $30 billion worth of pork barrelling money out of the National Party's desire to support the net zero by 2050. But this is money that was not sort of thought through, not sort of, here's a great infrastructure list of the works that needs to be done in this country. This was just a basic pork barrel handed to Barnaby to try and justify Barnaby supporting net zero by 2050. This wasn't thought through infrastructure.
We are out of time. Stephen Conroy, Karim Benzema, he's the rightful winner of the Ballon d'Or.
Look, given what he achieved in the Champions League, where he beat Chelsea along the way in an outrageous result, but yeah, he deserves it. He's got some question marks over his past, but absolutely head and shoulders better than anyone else in the world last year.
I agree. Good to see you, Stephen.